Okay, so a couple things. I got a tiny soda, which is one gonna wash down, which is going to wash down this leftover pasta and very meaty pasta sauce. 3. There is a fire like 20 miles south of where I am, or something like that. I don't know the distance very well. And we are going to be reacting to the strange drawing of Natalie Wood. I remember this being in the episode on being a segment on Crime Watch Daily when I used to watch Crime Watch Daily. So let's get on with it. 3, 2, 1, play.
This week on Buzzfeed Unsolved, we discussed the highly controversial drowning of Natalie Wood. Get your sunglasses ready because this one is packed full of bright stars. Wow, he had them ready. He didn't even know I was going to say that.
I got transition lenses.
I like to say that this story isn't going to be chock full of terrible Christopher Walken impressions, but I can't say that.
And I got pee in my bra.
Boys!
2 mice. Wow.
Alright, let's get into it. On November 29, 1981, at about 7:30 a.m., Natalie Wood's body was found floating face down in the Pacific Ocean around 200 yards off Catalina Island's Blue Cavern Point. She was wearing only a flannel nightgown, blue wool socks, and a red down jacket. Before we get into the details of the scene, let's establish what led up to that point. Natalie Wood was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood up until her untimely death, with roles that include the classic Christmas film Miracle on 34th Street, which she starred in only at age 11, Rebel Without a Cause in her teenage years, West Side Story, and Gypsy.
Gypsy.
Yeah, that.
Oh, the famous Gypsy.
Admittedly, I was like, oh, Miracle on 34th Street, cool. Rebel Without a Cause, great. West Side Story,
classic.
and of course,
Gypsy.
Eerily, from her early childhood, Wood's mother was said to have filled her with a fear of dark water, as a fortune teller had once prophesied that she would die of drowning.
Jesus Christ. Did her mother bring her to a fortune teller?
I imagine it was like one of those like fortune tellers you see at like a carnival. They're like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if you tell my fortune with little playing cards?
Oh, maybe she'll tell you you're gonna marry a rich man. And she would.
You're gonna drown one day.
Water's gonna fill your lungs.
And I was like, all right, we've had enough of this, thank
Let's
you.
go get funnel cakes.
In a chilling incident from when Wood was 10 years old and filming The Green Promise, a bridge rigged to collapse threw her into the water, despite her mother assuring her it would be safe. Wood broke her wrist and left the incident even more terrified of the water than when she began. As a child, she had such a phobia of water, it is said she was afraid to wash her hair and had recurring nightmares about drowning.
This is brutal.
This reminds me, I should wash my hair tonight.
Actually, warranted in all these fears.
This would be like if you were eaten by a shark.
Or a bear.
Oh, I'm sorry. This would be like if you were eaten by a
I
bear.
thought for a second we were talking about things that are actually scary.
I made the mistake of thinking of the most apex predator, and I forgot that you're afraid of one of the lesser predators. So yes.
No, I'm going to let this slide because I know you're just trying to get a rise out of me, and you truly do believe that the bear is the most dominant animal.
Actually, a month ago, someone I know said that their neighbor saw bear tracks.
It's a killing machine.
Yeah,
Like,
pop that thing
a little
in and
more
see
north
how
of where I am.
On Wood's 18th birthday, she went on a date with actor Robert Wagner, later star of television series Heart to Heart, who was 26 at the time. They married in 1957, but divorced just a few years after. Wood married and divorced another man later in her life, only to marry Robert Wagner once again in 1972. Wood herself
Okay, Robert
said
looked
that she
like a
believed her
douchebag
feelings
in that
of
first
torment
wedding
were rooted in the
photo.
feeling that she did not truly know herself, as people had told her what to do her whole life, including her mother.
I hate when that happens.
Than I originally anticipated.
Wagner must. I mean, does that man have a magical penis or something? They got divorced and then she.
You think the only reason
got
someone would go back to
magic
someone is
hands.
because they have a magical penis?
I mean, I feel like divorce is probably a lot of work.
Do you not know how love works?
Maybe I don't.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Pushing forward to more recent
I know how
history of the incident,
brainwashing
it was the
works.
weekend just after Thanksgiving of 1981. Wood had been working on the science fiction film Brainstorm with Christopher Walken at the time, and he was invited to join her and Wagner on their yacht named the Splendor that weekend. According to the captain of the boat, Dennis Davert, who had worked with the couple for years and considered himself a family friend, Wood had become infatuated with Walken during filming, and Wagner had even flown out to where they were filming to make sure he wasn't going to, quote, make a fool of himself over this, end quote.
This is rough.
To be fair, can you blame her?
I'm actually a little curious about that. I have a hard time imagining someone going gaga over walking.
You go gaga over Walken.
I go gaga over walking. You know, he's probably magnetic. I bet when you get in a room with him, he commands the space.
Yeah, no one's like, oh, Chris Walken's here. Everyone's like, Chris just fucking walked in. Chris Walken.
What a walking.
Boys, the
Boys.
party's here.
I brought some cocktail weenies.
Though, Wagner was not the only one with a jealous streak, as around the same time, reports say Wood was suffering from jealousy over Wagner's on-screen romance with his heart-to-heart co-star Stephanie Powers. The group left on the yacht around noon on Friday, November 27th, about 2 days before Wood would be found dead. Everyone on the boat, including the ship's captain Davern, had been drinking for much of the weekend. On that Friday night, Wagner and Wood argued, to the point that Davern was concerned and asked Walken to get involved.
That is a house kitchen.
Refused to intervene, saying, quote,
They put a house
"Never get
kitchen
involved in an
over
argument
a
between
boat."
man and a wife, end quote. Davern ended up taking Wood ashore that night in the yacht's 13-foot inflatable dinghy named the Prince Valiant, and they slept at the Pavilion Lodge Hotel in Avalon. The first time Davern was questioned about this night, he lied, saying that all four of them had stayed on the yacht. The police, however, already had evidence that they had not been on the boat the first night, so Davern was prompted to tell the truth. He went on to say that he and Wood spent the night in the same room, but they just drank wine and went to sleep. Davern also claims that in their relationship, he felt very protective of her, and she was very comfortable with him.
He seems like a good influence here, maybe.
You
Yeah.
could spin it that way, you could spin it the other way. You could see both sides of the coin here.
I mean, if he's removing her from a volatile situation.
Yeah, but the intentions behind that perhaps weren't the most valiant. The next morning, on Saturday, November 28th, they returned to the Splendor, where Wood apparently decided to stay for the remainder of the weekend, based upon Walken's expressed desire to stay. Walken and Wood went ashore that afternoon to begin drinking at Doug's Harbor Reef, where they were later joined by Wagner and Davern. The party's waitress recalls that at dinner, they consumed 2 bottles of wine, 2 bottles of champagne, and one of the men was also drinking daiquiris.
Jesus.
Holy shit.
The 80s are great.
Yeah, it's just going to town. I'd like to imagine with Walken, but
Just throwing back the daiquiris.
he seems like a daiquiri guy. I don't know.
5 daiquiris.
She also recalls that Wood did not eat much of her dinner, and that she did not seem to be in a good mood, and when she left the restaurant, appeared to be stumbling. In one moment, Wood was said to have thrown a glass down onto the floor, though Walken later explained the incident, saying that it was his fault, because he threw his glass on the floor after making a toast, and Wood had just followed suit. So fucking Walken is essentially Thor.
Yeah.
I like this drink. Another. Davern has said Walken and Wood seemed very flirty throughout the dinner. They boarded the dinghy the Valiant to return to their yacht for the night at about 10 p.m. As they were boarding, a witness from the Harbor Patrol office said they heard Wood scream about something, which he assumed was just because she was drunk. Witnesses sleeping aboard a nearby boat, John Payne and his girlfriend Marilyn Wayne, reported hearing shouts at around midnight. However, there was a party going on somewhere nearby, so he figured it was from that and did not respond. Payne claimed to hear a woman yelling, quote, "Help me, someone please help me," end quote, coming from the near stern of the Splendor, and potentially from someone in a dinghy. He also believed to hear a man who sounded very drunk respond, quote, "Okay, honey, we'll get you," end quote. But his tone was so mocking, he claims this is why he believed the cries were associated with the party.
Mocking tone. When you say mocking tone, you mean like,
Okay, honey, we'll go get you.
we'll help you. Like intimidating, scary, spooky.
Oh, well, you went a little darker with it. Maybe that's what he said. Or maybe he was just joking around like, oh, go get you. Or maybe this didn't happen at all. Maybe this guy didn't hear what he thought he heard.
Dude, you just like park next to them? Like binoculars, like a creep?
A star watcher.
Oh, what's going on?
Yeah,
there?
they woods up on that boat.
Oh, she's screaming. Better take a note about that.
Reports say there was a nonviolent argument aboard the yacht soon before Wood disappeared. Wagner has said that he and Walken did have a political debate that he began at dinner, that they continued while aboard the yacht. He describes the event saying, quote, "There was no fight, no anger. Just a lot of words thrown around like you hear in most political discussions. Natalie sat there not saying much of anything and looking bored. She left us after about a half hour, and we sat there talking for almost another hour. Then I went to kiss her goodnight and found her missing. End quote.
That is not a bed you see in a boat.
You're just holding the pen and saying,
He didn't notice she was missing till he went to go kiss her goodnight.
Yes.
That is an ugly mannequin behind Shane.
It doesn't. That's what I'm saying. You kind of don't really know who to believe here.
Okay.
Okay. 1:30 a.m. that night.
That's me during convo too.
Davern made a distress call to the Coast Guard, saying that Natalie Wood had disappeared from the couple's yacht the Splendor. And about 6
Yeah,
hours
people
later,
shouldn't
taking us back
disappear
to the start,
on
the body
boats.
of Wood was found floating about a mile away from the yacht. The Prince Valiant, the inflatable dinghy, which she had presumably left the boat on, was found washed up on the rocks just a little further south. The ignition was off, the gear shift was set to neutral, and the oars were locked, which implies she may have never started the vessel. The coroner reported that she had drunk 7 or 8 glasses of wine before the incident. Her blood alcohol level was at least 0.14, and the police ultimately ruled her death as accidental. She also had superficial bruises on her arms and lower legs, as well as a cut on her cheek, though at the time, these were all attributed to what might have naturally occurred as she fell in the water.
She was a little drunk. I don't know how many. I'm not a big wine guy, so I don't know if.
Well, you know what blood alcohol is, 0.14.
0.14 is pretty high. 0.08 is. You're drunk.
You're drunk, you shouldn't be driving. 0.14 is you should be laying down.
Okay, well, this is gonna be tricky. I'm interested to hear the theories because it does sound like it could be a case.
Oh,
of
is that the little
accidental
stimming toy that Shane has? I have some of my own.
That Natalie accidentally
This
fell
was a
into the
necklace
water
that I
and
accidentally
drowned.
broke.
The conclusion drawn by the chief medical examiner in the LA County Coroner's Office, Thomas Noguchi, was that Wood had fallen into the water while trying to board the Valiant. Noguchi hypothesized that her down jacket had likely become heavy and soaked, but she never thought to remove it due to her inebriated state. Fingernail scratches found on the side of the Valiant show she tried to climb back
Oh,
aboard the
man.
dinghy. Eventually, she likely finally drowned due to hypothermia and exhaustion. Ultimately, it's likely she clung to its side as it drifted away from the Splendor. However, Wood's sister, Lana Wood, had this to say on the notion. Quote, "My sister was not a swimmer and did not know how to swim, and she would never go to another boat or to shore dressed in a nightgown and socks." End quote. I guess if she's spent her whole life being afraid of water and she can't swim,
Probably put on a life vest.
well,
or
why
something.
would she even attempt to
Or
do
even
this?
attempt in her nightgown, no less. In
Yeah.
her nightgown, no less.
That's why it's strange. I guess when I'm drunk, I
I've
attempt
done
to-
some stupid things.
I guess I would attempt to do things that I'm scared of, but going back to my fear of bears, I would never go, hey, let me go pet this bear.
No, I wouldn't. One of my greatest fears, I think I've said this before, is that someone will trick me into doing heroin.
Which is the dumbest fear I've ever heard in my life.
It kind of makes
would be against
sense.
My will.
How many situations could even put you up to that potential danger?
I don't know. All it takes
How many
is
parties are you going to with heroin?
none. But
It
someone
seems like a
could-
lot.
It's not the fear that I'm at a party. It's a fear that someone would come up to me on the street and put heroin in me, and then I'm hooked forever.
What the fuck? Speaking of the nightgown and socks, Robert Wagner also said in a 1986 biography, quote, "It was only after I was told that she was dressed in a sleeping gown, heavy socks, and a parka that it dawned on me what had really occurred. Natalie obviously had trouble with that dinghy slamming up against the boat. It happened many, many times before, and I had always gone out and pulled the ropes tighter to keep the dinghy flush against the yacht. She probably skidded on one of the steps after untying the ropes. The steps are slick as ice because of the algae and seaweed that's always clinging to them. After slipping on the steps, she hit her head against the boat. I only hope she was unconscious when she hit the water." End quote.
Maybe she did just
What
slip.
the fuck?
Wagner sounds like he's putting forth a pretty solid theory.
Anytime someone has a very hyper-detailed account of what happened, that makes them
Here's what
free to
must
go.
have happened.
Here's what must have
These
happened.
40 things in succession.
Exactly. However, some have criticized this theory, as the Valiant was a rubber dinghy, which according to Noguchi would make very little noise when they bump a yacht. Additionally, Noguchi reported forensic evidence, including the untouched algae on the swim step. It appeared that Wood may have been attempting to board the dinghy, rather than adjust the rope. Police investigators also found broken glass in the Splendor's main salon, which Wagner
Broken
attributed
glass,
to the
seriously.
disease, a possible factor in why Wood may have fallen into the water. However, it's here that the testimony of Captain Davern differs. He claimed that Wagner grabbed and smashed a wine bottle after going into a jealous rage over Wood and Watkins' interactions. He claims Wagner exclaimed, quote, "Jesus Christ, what are you trying to do? Fuck my wife?" End quote. So you can see where the two accounts of what happened are drastically different.
I just don't understand what the captain would have. Why would he make this up?
True, unless he was, here's another term, unless he was in love with Wood and jealous of Wagner.
So it'd be a love dodecahedron.
How you want it.
Damn it, Ryan.
What do you think Christopher Walken said when he said that?
No! Oh, Bobby. Bobby. Two mice.
Strangely, despite blaming the rough seas at first, Wagner admitted to having broken the wine bottle that night in the salon in his autobiography in 2009.
Yeah, weird.
So,
It's weird that his memory got clearer
Yeah.
almost 30 years later.
Uh-huh.
And with that, let's get into the next theory, that there was foul play involving Robert Wagner. Before we move forward, it's worth noting that Davern is an unreliable witness for a variety of factors, including that it took years for him to come forward with what he says is the truth. Additionally, he seemed to release bits of information to the tabloids in the years following the incident in a relatively unsavory way. That being said, on the whole, many factors of his story ring more consistent with testimony of other witnesses and other evidence. In fact, Walken's description of what happened when they returned to the boat is also closer to Davern's than Wagner's.
Maybe Davern was scared that Wagner would do something to him.
To which Walken defended Wood at first, but then stepped outside rather than get further involved. When he returned, the two had made amends. Davern also describes events this way, but instead of Wood and Wagner making up, he states he also heard the two continue to argue from where he was on the bridge of the boat, and even claims he heard the dinghy being untied. He claims there was then silence until Wagner returned at about 11:30 p.m., looking, quote, tousled and sweating profusely, as if he had been in a terrible fight, an ordeal of some kind, end quote. Davern also says that Wagner discouraged him from turning on the floodlights or starting up the engine in any attempt to search for her, saying that Wagner said he didn't want to alert the people nearby.
That's hella sus.
Yeah, I would not want to be this captain.
I gotta say though, after hearing this account, the one person who I didn't expect to just be very innocent, fucking Walken seems like he was just chilling.
He was just, he was just trying to fuck somebody's wife.
Davern he has always believed something malicious may have occurred to Wood, as he believes she would have never tried to go to shore alone, and feels sure if she did want to return, she would have had him take her, as she had the night before. Based on new information, including information from Davern, the case was reopened in 2011. In 2012, the LA County Coroner's Office changes the cause of death from, quote, accidental drowning, end quote, to, quote, drowning and other undetermined factors, end quote. The new report casts more questions on the nature of the bruises and abrasions on Wood's body, positing that they likely had to have been on her body before she fell into the water. Dr. Lakshmanan Satyapajiswaran, the chief medical examiner,
that is a tongue twister of a name.
The location of the bruises, the multiplicity of the bruises, lack of head trauma or facial bruising support bruising having occurred prior to entry in the water, since there are unanswered questions and limited additional evidence available for evaluation. It is opined by this medical examiner that the manner of death should be left as undetermined, end quote.
Well, it's good to re-examine these cases like this every now and then, because the investigators nowadays aren't big heart-to-heart fans.
Was Heart to Heart that big of a thing? Was Wagner that big of a star?
I feel like I'd have watched it. It was about a husband and wife detective team?
I honestly don't even know.
I'm gonna check it out.
Okay, well you do that and you report back to me how it is.
Heart to Heart and Gypsy.
Gypsy, you
These
gotta
are
see
my
Gypsy.
watch
Those
list.
two.
I hope these are on Netflix.
As of
It sounds like
2013, the
Hard to Hard might be a spy film mixed with a coroner's thing.
As, quote, open and ongoing. Nothing definitive has closed it, end quote. However, he had also previously stated that Wagner is not a suspect. Natalie's sister said, quote, I can't imagine that he, being Wagner, purposely would have done anything to hurt Natalie. However, I know things happen when there is too much drinking and fighting, end quote.
I'm surprised her sister defends Wagner.
Does she though? She
Well,
says...
the thing that she said is very interesting about how, when everybody's drunk, I can't imagine ever murdering someone.
But
even
when you
dr-
drink, you
even-
can't imagine murdering
No,
someone?
I'm saying even drunk. But I ate a pumpkin once when I was drunk. I just took a bite out of a pumpkin.
You're a weird dude.
That's
Eating
just
pumpkins, afraid of people sticking you with heroin needles. These are
That's a
weird.
rational fear.
That is not a rational fear.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
What are we talking about?
Octopuses are irrational fear.
Whether or not he was responsible, Wagner claims to feel responsible in part for her death, in that he did not notice she was gone sooner. Christopher Walken has spoken on the incident as a whole, officially saying, quote, "The people who are convinced that there was something more to it than what came out in the investigation will never be satisfied with the truth, because the truth
Yeah.
is, there's nothing more to it. It was an accident." End quote. Dwayne Rasher, the former lead police investigator on the case, still says, quote, "I can't tell you exactly how she got in the water." End quote. In the end, the tragic passing of Natalie Wood will continue to confound the world. The familiar faces involved only add to the mystery, and unfortunately, we may never know what truly happened to Natalie that night, as the case of Natalie Wood will remain unsolved.
Maybe the guy pushed her into the water in a drunken anger. Like he was like, I'm done with you. And she fell into the water. See? And that is it. Yeah, I think Natalie Wood was pushed into the water because he was drunk. It might be some sort of manslaughter type thing. See you guys in the next one.